Very nice of you. And, well, this afternoon, I want to talk about the cosmic plan. And in this lecture, I'm going to attempt to bring it as much up to date as I possibly can. Of course, there's always things happening in this, so it would be very difficult to keep it up to date, as it were. 18,617,841 years before the birth of Christ, the Sanat Kumara, or the Lord of the Flame, from Venus,
always wanted to trade currency markets but didn't know how to start. Did you read it or once about the vast fortunes that change hands of currency trade? Wonder how you begin.
the Shambhala was made for him out of etheric substance in a tight orbit of this planet over the Gobi Desert. And of course, it is still there today and will remain there as far as we know, as long as it is needed. The Sanat Kumara came as a manipulation and as a manipulator to help the race that was coming to Earth, a race which had committed the worst possible crime, that of the murder and complete destruction of a planet. All that is left today of that planet Maldek is the asteroid belt. Atomic power was discovered, and mankind learned to use the full power of the atom, not approximately 1/2000th part of the power that it can use today, but the full power of the atom. And as a result, destroy the world. He had to be reborn somewhere in the solar system. He could not be reborn outside of it by law. So he had to be reborn somewhere within the solar system. Well, he couldn't be reborn on, for instance, the planet Saturn, because already this was peopled by a very highly advanced culture who spread their influence to the far sides of this galaxy. He couldn't be born on the planet Jupiter because of several reasons. One was that this was the reception planet of this solar system, and delegates, for want of a better term, came from all over the known parts of the galaxy to the planet Jupiter before they entered the halls of learning on Saturn. He couldn't be born on Mercury because the environmental conditions were so high that his course body would have lasted a millisecond. he couldn't be reborn on Venus because the race from Venus, again, travelers, teachers, organizers, uplifters, had traveled throughout the galaxy and were committed in certain ways, even millions of years ago. He couldn't be reborn on Mars because the planet Mars was the industrial center of this solar system. By industrial center, I don't quite mean it in the same way that you would think of Coventry or Birmingham. Was peopled by a highly sophisticated, very cultured race of individuals who
All right, welcome
were expert in the art
everyone to another open discussion on various topics. This is actually, if my count is correct, class number 100. We've had about 100 open discussions on various topics, covering many subjects, answering many of your questions, as many as we can. And I hope everyone has been able to get much out of these open discussions. Throughout these 100 sessions, we've looked at various handouts, all of which are available. If you're joining us via YouTube, in the description, there should be a link to a Google Drive shared folder, I believe going back to 2019, containing handouts and notes that we've looked at and discussed together. You should also be able to find a playlist on YouTube containing most of these open discussion on various topics. I say most because some of them we may have covered some material that we decided to make private. And if you would like access to those videos, to the private videos in that playlist, just go ahead and send us an email and requesting access, and make sure that if the email address you're emailing us from is not the address on your YouTube account you would like access for, then include your email address in the email that you would want to be granted access to those videos, and we'll take care of that for you. Okay. So let's open up with reciting the prayer for spiritual workers. And then I'll turn the floor over to all of you to ask any questions or any comments you may have. We're still waiting for people to jump in on the stream or to join us in Zoom. So we'll keep the floor open for good maybe 7-10 minutes. And depending on the amounts and type of questions we have coming in, we'll switch back over and continue our discussion on the census and look at the other handouts we left off from last time. All of these prayers are available from and through the Aetherius Society. When you become a member of their society, you are given a membership folder filled with these prayers, as well as a lot of information about the society itself. So if you would like more information about that, you can go to aetherius.org. I'll put the webpage up in a bit. Or you can send us an email and we'll be glad to forward you more information about that. All right, let's begin. Prayer for spiritual workers. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their limitations, would smite me. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their weakness, would not heed me. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their ignorance, will defile you through me. And I ask, Almighty God, O wondrous power, that your strength may be given to me now, so that I might be fortified by this, so that I might go forward bravely into the world, and despite reception, send forth my love of thee throughout all races of man. Almighty God, give me the power and strength to rise above my karmic weakness, the deficiencies in the pattern of my evolution, so that I might evolve and become stronger, I, and even stronger in thy everlasting light. O God, thy will be done. All right. Zoom link. All right, give me a second and I will post the link for the Zoom in chat. Yeah, let me just stop trying first. Okay. Okay, there's the link for the chat. I'm sorry. There's a link for the Zoom meeting in the chat if you wish to join us via Zoom. You can use that link. There's a question here. Is it bad for a yogi to sit by an open fire? I read it in a yogic book, so but I can't remember which one.
Well, I've never heard of that before. I would like to know under what context that they came up with that. I know there's yoga practices that you can actually you use fire in order to help you concentrate or extract the energy from the fire. So
Yeah, Jack, did you mean to stare into a fire or just sit by a fire? Okay, just sit by them.
that's a new one for me. Have you heard that?
No, just sitting by it or open a flame, no. Or staring into a flame.
Staring, well, you don't stare into a flame unless it's like a candle or whatever.
Yeah, candle. Okay, so last time we were looking at the dominating pranas. And withdrawing the senses. Any other questions? I know we're still waiting for people to jump in on the stream, so in a few minutes before we move to the handouts. Okay, also, can the, let's see, let me bring this close. Can the candle flame practice hurt your eyes? I think you mentioned that before. How should we be careful with that?
I don't think I mentioned that before.
Dr. King did in a lecture. He gave a warning about it, about that candle flame practice. And in I don't know if you saw them, Jack, in the practices lectures that Nehemiah gave, he gave us an alternative to the staring into the flame practice, to help us develop our concentration. You can ask, I think, if on this, Nehemiah feels comfortable sharing that practice now, you can send us an email about it. We can share with you through email. Actually, he gave us a couple practices in that series, how to help us develop not only our concentration, but our clairvoyance, which the staring to the flame practice too. That practice is also given by Dr. George King in a couple of lectures. I think there's a clairvoyance lecture that he gives, but he does give a warning about it, that it could damage your vision, if I remember correctly. If you're joining us via Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature to either ask your question audibly, or you can type the question in the chat. Either is fine. If you're just on YouTube, then you can use the chat to post your questions. Okay, Breland, I see your hand there. Go ahead, ask your question. Welcome. Good to see you again.
Hello. So I have a question about like the Tritaka, or the gazing meditation. So when I do the gazing meditation, I do usually use a dot because I don't always have a candle readily available. And like when I do the meditation, I see like a white, like glowing light around stuff, like around the object. And then when I close my eyes to rest them, I kind of noticed I was seeing similar shapes to the objects that were in the room. Do you know if this is the correct technique, or if that's making any progress? Or...
Yeah, normally in the beginning of your concentration and working on developing your vision, your clairvoyant vision, those are things that will happen to you. You begin to, when you close your eyelids, you'll see multiple shapes and colors that you can't even identify. And you'll have a panorama type vision of these things where they pass by the eyes and like circling. Uh, what I experience is that you begin to see parts or levels of the aura that's around your body, and thoughts and different mental substance. They take on different shapes and colors, and essentially that's what you're looking at. You're looking into your aura, and which is your mental body. And when you see most people, if you look at them just slightly clairvoyantly or psychically, you will see a light around their body. You'll see a grayish light, not a bright white light, but a grayish light. And sometimes it can be tinted with a particular color. It expands around objects and around people, probably a couple of inches away from their body. So when you begin to energize your psychic, your body, your aura, your nadis, you begin to experience flashes of things like that. So that's normal.
Okay. And so when I do pranayama, I am seeing like the same type of flashes of color, but then also I kind of move into like a state of stillness, and I just want to know, like sometimes, like I hear it's called like automatic retention or something like that. I start to move into a more automatic retention the more I start to concentrate, but then it seems like I'm straining a little bit.
Well, that's going to happen until you gain control over the mind.
Okay.
Now, understand this. The mind is on multiple levels of existence. Your breath is the mind. Your hearing is the mind. Your voice is mind. The things you see is mind. So even the heartbeat is mind. Everything, because mind shapes everything. So it's a slow process of taking control of the mind. You know, even the tongue is the mind. So everything is an extension of the mind, because what happens, mind molds and shape prana and matter. So without mind, prana, matter, anything existing cannot move, cannot function. So
So when
pranayama, correct use of pranayama, you gain control over mind, but there's multiple levels of control that you must gain. That's why I tell people to go back to the Lord Patanjali teachings, where he gives the 7 limbs of yoga. The first one is yama, which is control over thoughts and actions. And the second one is niyama, which is to observe God in everything. And what that does, that purifies your thought and actions. Because of the state of mind that we exist in, we take in a lot of false information, which resort into what the yogis call impurity traits. We see things and we judge it wrongly. we interpret it wrongly, and because of that, we form a type of a type of thought that's really corrupt in its making, and therefore it shapes and molds energy and matter in the wrong way. So we have did that for many, many lifetimes. So the use of mantra, prana, prayer, correct thinking, correct actions, it begins to burn up all that false knowledge that we have deposited in our auric body, uh, which they call negative samskaras. And
Um, so yeah, I'm beginning to understand that actually more. I noticed that like throughout the day when I do pranayama, if I have something like bothering me or something, it'll come right up, and then like it'll kind of just like settle or something, and I'll kind of feel like refreshed. But if any like conflicts come up, they kind of pop up, and then I have to like push my concentration back to where it was supposed to be. Is what I kind of noticed.
yeah, so it's a constant practice to make those things happen.
Um, I had a question too about the so the kumbhaka, or I think that's what it's called. Um, like when I hold my breath in, like I was reading Raja Yoga by Swami Vivekananda, and he says, don't hold the breath in too much, but that seems to be the best, like, or the easiest one for me, I think. But so I'm not sure if I should hold the breath out as well, or so.
You said Swami Vivekananda said what now?
He said it could injure if you retain the breath in on the kumbhaka, like so breathing in through the left or right nostril and then holding both and then breathing out the other alternate nostril.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one I mainly practice
I mean,
actually.
that's a practice, but you have to gradually obtain the right use of that. So you can't force it. You have to practice for a long time until you can hold the breath uh, by in and double the count. You just can't
Mhm.
try to push that count uh, by just pure force. You have to allow your body to adjust. If not, you can get the bends. It's like you deep sea diving. You can end
Mhm.
up hurting yourself. So all these practices are supposed to be used on a gradual basis, where that's why they tell you to practice it for months and years
Mhm.
in order to gain control over
Okay, so because yeah, that's like the only one I practice. So I don't know if I should be practicing
it.
holding the breath out as well, or
You should practice. I I always recommend. I recommend Dr. George King's Contact Your Higher Self through Yoga. He gives 6 practices and he tells you how to gradually begin to practice. It's a small book. It's very inexpensive, and you can go online and look at it. I don't know, Dwayne, you can pull that up and show everyone. And it's a real good book. I will also tell you to read uh, to study The Science of Breath by Yogi Brahmacharaka. It gives you a knowledge base of the pranayama or the breathing exercises, and then also Swami Vivekananda. He writes a book on Raja Yoga. I would tell you to look at that. Also, Swami Sivananda gives a book on pranayama, and he gives a book on Kundalini Yoga. And I think both of them are a collection of his essays or articles he wrote, and he goes into great detail. I would read that for information, but I would practice Dr. George King's 6 practices, and that will gradually lead you into other deeper advanced practices when you're ready for it. Because he gives a lot of safety. In fact, he blends it together and show you, well, the way he blends it together is there's a lot of safety mechanisms within it. So I would study that.
I kind of want to give other people a chance to, if they have any questions, but I do have more questions actually.
Okay, we'll come back around, Breland. I'm just going to show a couple of links really quickly. So the link I mentioned earlier being this site webpage, where you can go to get more information on a membership is here at ethereus.org. You go to About, Memberships and Initiation. And they'll have more information there, as well as for contact a link there. Or you can also send us an email and we'll help you with that as well. And with the text that I just mentioned, Contact Your Higher Self, the Yoga, is also available at their society website on the bookstore. It is available both as a print copy or even as an ebook. And in that, it gives you several pranayama practices, as well as other practices like the water charging practice, the full and new moon practice, etc., that you can incorporate into your yoga. The breathing practices contained in this text, if used together, is a complete pranayama system. And it's a safe pranayama system that Dr. George King put together for us here in the West, but anybody can use it and find great benefits from it in conjunction with your other practices. And the ebooks that Nehemiah mentioned, okay, Yogi Ramadraka, The Science of Breath is here. Which I can't see. Oh, here it is. Yeah, first one, Science of Breath, and a couple other texts here as well. So if you go to our website, mysticknowledge.org, and on the ebook library links, you can find those books that he mentioned, as well as dozens more. Nima, you mentioned in your response to Breland false knowledge as a negative samskara. Could you go a little more into that?
Yeah, so because of our mental level of understanding, we see things in a particular way, which we may hold to be true, and is only partly true and probably mostly false. So from that, we build our character, our personality on that. And that seems to damage us with the 20 or 21 listed impurities that the yogis always talk about as lodged in the lower chakras, because in the lower chakras, that's where our consciousness is wrapped up, and that's the most active part of the subconscious that's trying to control these things with deviant forces. So when we look through our eyes, you know, we don't see what's really there, and we don't hear what's really there, and we don't smell what's really there, and we don't have the right sense of taste or touch. So then we build our mental consciousness around that false knowledge, and it limits our ability. It limits all 10 senses. It limits us, and it throws us into limited cycles of experience. So that's why yoga, the different forms of yoga, always talks about a liberation, and it's liberating you from that false knowledge, from that false existence, and it's gradually brings you into union with God, or union with the higher senses. So I mean, that's what's happened. The mechanism is to enlighten you and give you a greater perspective of your outer, or your sensory perceptions, which will eventually lead you into higher states of consciousness.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? And if you're wondering about the 10 senses that Nehemiah referred to in his response just now, those are, we have been covering that in the past couple of open discussions, and we'll look more into that a little later when we switch over to the handouts. So any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question about, so when I see, are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. When I see, like you were telling me about the specks of light that I see, like floating around. How do I, you said there's like a technique to be able to breathe those in, because now the energy is like around me, they seem like they're, I don't know, I feel like I have a little bit more control over feeling them, especially I've been doing a qigong practice. That's like that's like or qigong. How do I breathe those, like the energy in?
I don't think you need to worry about that right now. What you need to worry about is just taking control over your breath, regulating your breath. Like I said, go back to the 6 practices in the contact your higher self through yoga, and learn those 6 practices diligently. Practice them diligently. Learn them, then practice them diligently. And when the time comes for you to know how to breathe in what's called energy globules, or which usually is in a sphere, or in a huge. Some of them are the size of a basketball. Some of them are the size about 2 feet, 2 to 3 feet large. But that comes later. You don't have to worry about that right now. So just learn to regulate breath, retain breath, and then using affirmations, mantra, and visualization with those practices can help you to will help you towards a depth shift of using those practices. And then once you get to that level, then you can worry about those things.
Okay. And then also, I think this is along the same lines. Uh, when I look at objects, it's kind of like fuzzy, and like seems like the solids are like made out of little tiny dots, kind of like moving a little bit. And when I look at people, I do see that like flashes of colored light coming off there, like the outline of them.
Like I said, note, keep a journal,
Yeah,
and note those things down. And you have to come to a conclusion of what those things are. Because a lot of things you see is based on your personality. A lot of psychic things you will begin to see, it will be related to you, to your character, your perception. It's when you move into the higher levels of contemplation is when that doesn't happen anymore. But in the beginning levels of concentration and contemplation, a lot of stuff is being projected from you and your aura and your character, and those are things that you have to grow beyond, and you have to find your own interpretation for them. Once you
Are you,
level
are you basically saying that that he's essentially looking at a mirror? The first stage is what you see as a mirror, even though you're seeing it coming off other people. Is that what you're saying?
yes, it's a projection of your own mind, and your own false knowledge, your basic self fighting itself in order to stay in control. But you have to fight through that, and you have to and be able to interpret those things on your own, and
okay.
and move beyond that until you get to the deeper levels of contemplation. When you get to the deeper levels of contemplation, then you'll see precise information, because you'll be able to see beyond that. It's like I think in the book, in the 14 lessons uh, uh, by Yogi Ramacharaka, Walker Williams Jackson, who actually uh, translated that, he says that in the beginning of psychic development, he's talking about clairvoyance. He said you can see the past that you see when you look into someone's past. What's happening? You're actually looking. It's like looking into the water, seeing a reflection of what happened. You're not reading the Akashic records, because you have not reached that level of contemplation. Forget about meditation to be able to see the Akashic records, but you can see a reflection of the Akashic records. So that's your beginning clairvoyance or psychic ability is a reflection of your own existence, and it or it's been filtered through the toxic aura that you have. So you have to learn to clean the aura up, or be able to pierce through it to see what's there. I did a lot of if you go back and look at my lectures, I go into that a lot, so that if you don't understand what I'm trying to say right now.
Yes, I definitely get it. Okay. So I will definitely make more note and make note of like the thoughts and the like emotions that I'm feeling there, so that I can make sure that I can deduce what is actually realistic and what is just my mental energies.
I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
And a question here. Hey, Lawrence, it's good to see you. How are you doing? And Lawrence has a question here. I know you said the purification can be obtained by doing the 6 exercises and contact your higher self through yoga. Can we also obtain purification by doing the 5 Tibetan rites?
Well, I didn't say it can be obtained by doing the 5. I mean, by doing the 6 exercises. I said the 6 yoga exercises by Dr. George King is a safe approach to pranayama, especially for the Western student. But I also said go back and study Science of Breath by Yogi Ramacharaka, the Raja Yoga exercises. I mean the Raja Yoga exercises or knowledge that Swami Vivekananda gives, Swami Sivananda give, and also if you want for the serious students and background, Swami Rama Prese, and that's for the knowledge base of it. But in moving forward, I said that the 6 practices are good. Now the 8 limbs of yoga, it really give you a pathway to help you to clear up the impurities within the body. Dr. George King also gives multiple practices to help clear up the impurities in the body. Now, what I'm telling you is things that most people don't go on. They don't go into this on a public forum. They like just talking about the glamour of things. But I'm telling you that it is these impurities that's stopping most people from developing themselves. They can be 20, 30 years in and may not even understand what I'm telling you. But it is these impurities in the lower chakras that stop us. They are the obstruction to the nadi pathways to allow us to advance. That's one of the reasons why Dr. King gave us mantra and said that service is the rule of the day, because through mantra, through prayer, through service, you naturally begin to see things from a different perspective, and you begin to clear up a lot of the negative impurities, because you cannot pray and heal and love someone and hold on to those major impurity traits. So without telling you, he tells you, and that's why the yogis gave us the 12 yogas over the years to actually bring about a purification within the body. Now, if the five, you said the Tibetan rites, tell me what they are, because they might be called, I might call them something else. If you really want me to speak on that. I hope that answers your question.
Any additional questions? I might add a couple of questions regarding the aura, being that indestructible body that we carry with us life after life after life. well, we don't carry with us, indestructible body that moves through each incarnation, continues through each incarnation. And I was curious that, so as we get older and the physical body becomes a full-grown adult, upon incarnation to the next life, how or by what mechanism is that aura compressed or modified into the physical body of a newborn baby?
I don't know. I have an understanding, because you have to understand, it's just like the master theorist came on and spoke through Dr. King one time. I think it was the master theorist, and it was Mars Sector 6 at one time. And they made a statement, but before they made the statement, they said, they said they're talking to the higher aspects of everyone on Earth.
Yes.
So what did that mean? And my understanding of the higher aspects, every living being on Earth has a soul or spirit. That soul and spirit is present with you and not present with you. And I came to that conclusion from just listening, from reading and studying for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
that the highest aspect of you is in an existence that's really untouchable to you. You cannot touch it. You cannot you don't have access to that. The soul have access to it, but you don't have access to it.
I mean, you the basic consciousness doesn't have it?
Consciousness.
Okay.
Because it's on a very low level of existence. So your higher self is on the higher realms of existence. It lives in the realms of the crown chakra and beyond. And then the soul splits itself up and works on multiple levels of existence. Your auric body, the auric body is the body of the soul.
Right.
That's why that body is indestructible. And it carries out the biddings of the soul. And that's why it takes you, the lower aspects of you, through cycles of experience in order to mold and shape those experiences so that one day it can be used as an ascendant body.
Mm-hmm.
So the masters told us, they said, when you ascend, you have to, before you leave this earth, you have to transcend all the energies that you spewed, throughout your lives. To me, that's telling me that most of that energy is being used. The energy we have today is the same energy or components of that energy that we're going to take with us from life after life after life after life after life. At the same time, the higher self is not going through that. The soul is going through that, but the highest, the spirit. I'm talking about the spirit. The spirit is not going through that.
Right.
Aspects of the soul is going through that because it's working through the auric body and the lower bodies. It's the animate it because it animates that mind energy, and that mind energy animates the other energies, the subtle energies and the gross matter, the different levels of gross matter. I know it's complex. I know it's hard to understand, but it's right there in front of us.
Right. So could it be that as the gross physical body is in the body of a baby and grows through the stages of growth and development, it's aspects of the aura that's being broken up, or more aspects of the aura is being revealed as that grows physical consciousness grows in awareness throughout its growth and development stages.
See, there again, I'm talking to you and you using false knowledge in order to regulate this. When we think of something being in a particular location, we limit ourselves because we say, "Oh, I can't be two places at one time." I'm sorry to tell you, you are in multiple places at one time.
Right.
So you have, we talk about 12 aspects of the Constitution of Man, right? 11 or 12 aspects. All those aspects are physically here and not physically here. You understand?
Yes.
Mind, yes. I share the same mind energy that you share. I also share the same mind energy that a bug on the ground shares. I also share the same mind energy of a lion in the wilderness. So am I here or am I everywhere?
Right.
So when you start talking about the soul, you start talking about the spirit, you start talking about the auric body, they localize themselves in certain areas in order to gain certain experience. But you must remember that we have soulmates. What are those soulmates? Those soulmates are who?
Aspects of parts of ourselves. What? They're us.
They are aspects of you. So we were told in the battles of the hills that when the great cosmic masters came before these evil lords of darkness or black magicians or whatever they want to call them at the time, that they used the law of karma against them by having them to chase them up into the higher realms. And once they got there, they knew that karma would equalize the situation by splitting their consciousness up into multiple parts and having them to be reborn again in multiple bodies.
Right. Which
now, you want to explain that as far as the aura being in multiple bodies? Because mind is everywhere. And the soul is above mind. So the soul is the manipulator of mind. The spirit and soul is the manipulator of mind, and mind is the manipulator of subtle energies and gross energies. So you can't look at you can't use physical physics to explain these things. You have to look at it on a metaphysical point of view. Just like Dr. George King said that the satellite number 3 came into orbit here, but it was also orbit around the sun,
right,
and several other planets inside the solar system. So because we see things on a 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional level when really within every dimension there's 7 dimensions, and those 7 dimensions can multiply themselves multiple times. And on the higher realms you have you can start talking about 9 dimensions,
right,
but yet there's 9 dimensions in every object that you see, the same way there's 7 dimensions in every object that you see. So
thank you. Any additional questions? Welcome, Vicky. I saw you just joined us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them in the chat. Or if you're joining us via Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature. Ask your questions at any time. I'll be glad to continue answering those for you. Last time, I believe maybe 2 weeks ago, and that was my fault, I forgot to schedule a class for last week. Well, last time we finished up the handouts on the nadis and the senses of man, the 2-page handout. We went through a bit of psychic developments, the senses, and we looked at the relationship between the physical, astric, and etheric counterparts of those 10 senses. And earlier today, in an answer to a question, you might have talked about the 10 senses. And that's what is listed here. We went over. And then we said we were going to pick up with a discussion on pratyahara, which is the withdrawal of the senses. And we're going to try to understand the withdrawing of the senses from the consciousness. Again, these handouts are available in the Google Drive shared folder. When you go there, you can navigate to, I think it says Zoom, and the Zoom, these 3 folders broken out by year, and this should be in the 2022 folder. If they're not there, please let me know, and I'll make sure that everyone can gain access to them. Oh, really quickly, Nimai, I did have a question on magnetism. From listening to Dr. George King and the Cosmic Masters, and even you a couple of times, talk about magnetism, it's different from the way we think about magnetism. Well, not different, that's not the right term. There's a cosmic concept of it beyond what we understand here on Earth. And could you...
In the sense of what?
In the way that it is manipulated as an energy. Because so it's, as we understand it, it is just an attraction repulsion force. But whenever I hear Dr. George King or the Cosmic Masters speak about it, it's much more than that. With many more aspects than just the kind of the 2 that we're aware of.
Yeah, I mean, on you talking about the personal magnetism that Dr. King talked about, or the magnetism used for energy, or both?
Both. But mainly that magnetism used for energy and how it's...
Yeah, because, you know, and I think Bernard can speak to this too, that the way man use energy, he breaks down everything. He breaks down everything, and in order to get this small amount of energy, you know, just like burning wood, you burn down a whole tree just to get a little tiny bit of energy.
Mm-hmm.
You rip the earth open and remove certain viable liquid substance or even metal or special or minerals, you know, and only to use it as only get a small amount of energy in it. Well, the metaphysicians, by using magnetism and tapping into a higher level of energy, by using magnetism, you can use that to gain a tremendous amount of energy. And that's what the metaphysicians or the mystics was talking about, that they had kind of tapped into that in the during the days of Atlantis and Lemurius, where if you and I join together to use the magnetism from our body, we can have enough energy to move a mountain. You know, because why? Because we're working within the laws of karma to actually joining forces with a particular thing on a mental level, on the level of mind, and dictating what we want and giving enough energy to the deviant forces around us in order to make those things happen. That's the difference between an ordinary man and an adept. You know, they can tap into that type of energy. You understand?
Partially.
Yeah. It's like I said before, the soul brings mind into place. The soul does not need a level of mind in order to form consciousness. You understand?
So the soul does not need a level of mind to form consciousness?
Does not need mind.
Does not?
Yeah, because it's above mind, it's above consciousness.
Okay.
It's a creative force. The soul works with creative energy. Right? So then mind is manipulated by the soul.
Right.
What? To bring energy into alignment,
form.
Alignment, which creates form, and which energy creates different levels of gross matter, from the most subtle level of gross matter to the most hardened gross matter, right? But mind works through all gross matter. Now, the higher the more sophisticated the gross matter becomes, the more mind can be driven through the gross matter. It's sort of like what it's called.
Sophisticated as in the finer that material becomes, or the more sattvic that material comes?
Yeah, we say finer, but is it finer really? You know, so it's like the nano things that scientists are playing with now, or shaped alloys. You know, what's allowing that to happen? A particular mind substance is allowing that to happen.
Right.
You know, the bionic arm, they can use mind, they can use energy, thought, which is a form of energy, to move those limbs.
Right.
You understand? So that's a form of magnetic energy. See, because thought waves is what? Thought waves is psychic energy. You know, the energy that runs through the nadis is actually psychic energy. Prana, Udana, Apana, Samana, Vyana, all that is psychic energy. You know, we call it prana, but if you want to describe it, you have to describe it as a psychic form of energy. Why? It's stagnant without what?
Consciousness.
Without mind.
Without mind.
And mind is formed by consciousness. See, so consciousness, you know, consciousness is psychic. It's a psychic energy. So therefore, the extension of that is psychic energy. Prana is psychic energy because it's controlled by psychic energy. It's controlled by mind, which is a magnetic energy. It's it's not an energy that's driven by breaking down things. So it's a psychic energy. It's an energy that's being pushed through nature by mind.
Which gives it that attracting, molding, and shaping quality, or that's that
Right.
magnetic aspect of it.
Bernard, you want to say anything on that?
I was just curious to know what Dwayne was trying to resolve. Is it the type of energy to use, or how it's used, or the best way?
Well, I was just trying to get a better understanding of how what the cosmic masters mean when they refer to magnetic or magnetism. Because Dr. George King says you can do magnetic healing, and it just seemed that he used the term or was referring to aspects of magnetism that we were not familiar with, or that I didn't understand from my experience with magnetism in physics, for example.
Oh, I think it's the same, as above, so below. So if you
Right.
think of the word, when you hear the word magnet, you think obviously the old-fashioned U with the poles, positive and negative, and what a magnet does, it attracts, but it can also be used to repel. So in physics, we have what is called the EM force, which is electro/magnetism. And magnetism is a force that works on the build up of things as opposed to the breakdown and distribution of things. It's something that is used when you amalgamate and put things together as opposed to when you break things down. And if you think about the process of evolution versus involution, the process of involution is where the one becomes the many.
Mm-hmm.
And evolution is the many becoming back to one, which is the ultimate source. And magnetism follows that more than anything else. So his reference, or their reference to that type of force, is a force, I think, that requires a total rethink in terms of how we look at energy and the very limited way it is controlled, which is via higher mind substance.
Okay.
But it is still based on principles of physics, because physics is a subset of metaphysics.
Right. And any questions?
I have a comment.
Oh, yes, Ben, go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much to have this exposure to the subtleties of life. And I want to add to what the person a moment ago said. Basically, that we live in a field, like the planet has its own electromagnetic field that protects us from the sun and protects us from meteorites and all kind of things. So that's kind of like the aura in the human body. And the field is very important because what make us is the field, and what sustain us is the field. And the main problem we have, we're not connected to the field. It's not something you have to fight. It's something you have to, it's like somebody gave you a present, but you never opened. It's uncovered. You don't know what the present is. You know, you shake it, there's something there, probably it's a box, but you can think about it many ways. It could be an iPhone. It could be a toy. It could be many ways. It could be inside. So I think that's the thing, and I really commend all of you that looking for that. You know what Bernard said is the energies that create us and sustain us, and at the same time when we are happy with the heart, the example with the chakras, with our energy, is when we continue in the field. We give back what gave us, and it's not personal. Unfortunately, because our ego, families, um, entities that take over our consciousness of self or the self itself, it get possessed. That feel like Mr. Nehemiah said, we break it down, we break it. We take nature and we cut in pieces so we can use it. But when we do that, also we destroy it. It's kind of strange, you know? But everything has to be cut in order to be used. Food has to be cut in pieces when we eat it, process it, and it becomes very small in order to be absorbed. So there is always a process going on, but the most dangerous one and the most is the soul level energy. That is the one that the soul of the planet, the soul of the universe, it's all around the universe. It's the same one. It's the same one that holds and sustains all of us. And more connected you are through teachings to Mr. Davis, it's better. Listen to Mr. Davis. He knows what he's talking about. But that's, I think, our mission is to reconnect with the lost connection of the field, of this electromagnetic field. Our heart, our chakra. It's amazing that the heart electromagnetically has more electricity than the brain, than the, it's amazing. You know, the one in the body that has the most electromagnetic field is your heart. And the Egyptians used to weigh the heart. They discarded the brain, the mind. The mind is nothing. It's the heart. It's your intention. It's your primal energy. And it's love. Love no have fear. Only the mind creates fear. And when we give ourselves to the mind, it takes over us. We are not the mind. We are the field, the electromagnetic field. That's who we are. And if you look at love, it doesn't have fear. It doesn't have mind. It doesn't think. It just feels. You put your hand over your heart and you will feel something different than if you put it over your head. Example, when somebody gets suicide, they don't shoot themselves in the heart. They never shoot themselves in the heart. They shoot themselves in the head. Why? Because they cannot deal with it. It took over. So I think many of our problems come because we don't listen to the heart. And we don't listen to that electromagnetic field that is all around us, sustain us, give us our life, and give the life of the planet, and give it life in the universe itself. Just a comment. Thank you very much,
Yeah.
all of you.
Thank you, Ben. Do you have additional comments or questions? Let's go into pratyahara. As you can see here on your screen. So pratyahara is the practice of withdrawing your consciousness from the physical senses. It includes creating the ability to withdraw man's 10 senses and 10 sense organs from the outside world. The 10 senses of man can be described as 1, smell, 2, taste, 3, sight, 4, touch, 5, hearing, 6, movement, 7, excretion, 8, generation, 9, grasping, and 10, speech. The last 5 senses are recognized by the metaphysical world as an additional 5 senses. Now, these 10 senses are used for perceiving, registering, and responding to sensory reception of outside stimuli. These 10 senses operate through the 10 sense organs within the physical body. Man's physical connection to the world is made through these sense organs. These senses keep the consciousness preoccupied with outside activities, not allowing man's consciousness to actually become familiar with the inner sensation of the mind or higher self. The mind energy that rests and radiates deeply from man's higher consciousness operates on a higher vibration and moves with a great velocity. In order to experience basic consciousness, the soul splits up its awareness into 10 sensations that can perceive and register various layers of basic consciousness on an etheric level, astral level, and a gross physical level. In order to further sustain the separation of the senses on its various levels in cycles of time, the soul then creates the sense organs of the etheric, astral, and physical bodies. One thing I want to point out here is, if you listen to Dr. George King and to Nehemiah Davis's lectures and talks on the senses and psychic senses, physical and psychic senses, is they always talk about or the brain, right? The functions of the brain as not being the seat of consciousness, but being a receiving and transmitting set. So when keep that in mind, those discussions when Nehemiah and Dr. George King have talked about the brain and the nervous system. Keep that in mind as you look at this paragraph and talk about the senses. In that last paragraph we just read, a lot of information is revealed on the actual functioning of the senses and how the soul, in its splitting up into its awareness into these 10 senses, allows us to experience basic consciousness. So keep that in mind. And so look at the illustration on the right-hand side, you see man's consciousness, right? And in order to experience, again, the basic consciousness, the soul splits up its awareness into the 10 sensations. And then you see those arrows pointing out to the senses. Those are the 10 sensations. And you can see that he's depicted here are the operational levels on which these senses work, both the etheric, astral, and physical. You have taste, touch, sight, scent, and hearing. And then you have the additional 5 senses recognized in metaphysics with excretion, speech, grasping, movement, and generation. And then you have the next illustration, you have these sense organs, which correspond to those 10 senses, being the tongue for taste, nose for smell, skin for touch, eyes for sight, ears for hearing, anus for excretion, the mouth with the tongue for speech, grasping, manipulating for hands, movements, feet, and genitals for generation. Nehemiah, can you explain why you have, in the first illustration of the senses, you have the 5 and 5 separated, and then the second, the sense organs, you have them connected, as well as the different colors representing the senses.
The sense organs, they work in conjunction with each other.
Right.
But with our perception, the senses work in conjunction, but we do not perceive all the senses. You understand that? And that's mainly because, again, like I told you, the false knowledge that we picked up over the lifetime.
Right.
But when you notice an animal, a so-called dumb animal, they are well connected to their senses. They just cannot comprehend or translate their senses the way human beings can because of self-consciousness, because of their lack of self-consciousness. But a dog, like I have a dog, I have a dog here in my house. If someone walks onto my property, she begins to jump up at attention and listen, and then she goes to the window where the person is. Or she began to bark, or she'll come to one of us to let us know that someone's on the property. They can be on the back of the house or the front of the house. And so it's, they, the dog animals are aware of those basic senses that and the function of it far better than human beings are. So, but it's because we have disconnected ourselves from them. Does that explain?
Yes, it does. There's a question here. James is asking, so in the higher realms, there are, or are there more angles of space, or are there not? It says ones that cannot be imagined in 3 physical measurements of width, length, and height.
On the very basic level, as I said before, there are 7 dimensions to everything. And when we talk about dimensions, it's just not the 3 dimensions or the 4 dimensions. It's 7 dimensions because the 3 dimensions, breadth, length, and height, cannot exist without time. It cannot exist without mind or motion or will. So it's will, mind, and motion that allows the remaining dimensions to even exist in any type of form. So it's almost ignorant of man to only examine 3 dimensions, and 4th dimension is time, of course, and inner cycles of time. That's, it's almost ridiculous. Because the first thing we do when we get ready to invent something is that we invent something with our mind, with our level of consciousness. And we examine everything from that point. We examine the motion, the mind aspect of it, meaning the structure, integrity of it, the what type of motions it can make, which will limit its functionality, and then the material that we would use, we would think about the how long it can exist in the condition that we're trying to place it in, and then we began to look at the physical container or whatever that it's going to be in, which is the length, breadth, and height of it. So, but then we want to dismiss the very thing that brings it into manifestation, which is will, mind, and emotion. So everything exists in a 7 dimension. I hope that answers your question. And I think I did a lecture. Is that still online?
Yes, you did. Yeah, I was trying to, you did a lecture on the 7 dimensions of creation. And I was also trying to find the lecture so people can pick up a copy of it from the Ethereal Society. Oh, here it is. Okay. So if you look back on our playlist, Nehemiah gave a lecture on the 7 dimensions of creation. And you can also, which was given or revealed to us by Dr. George King in a lecture, 7 Dimensions of Creation, where he describes the advanced intelligence who explained it to him, and then he taught it to really to us, and then taught us about it as well. So if you go to the Ethereal Society website, you can look for this lecture, the 7 Dimensions of Creation. It's available through CD and also available as audio download. James, in a follow-up question, says, indeed, that answers, but aren't there also 9 dimensions?
Yeah, but that's not for us right now. I was talking about cosmic beings. But first, understand the 7 dimensions, and then you'll understand how the 9 dimensions could work.
Yes, in this same lecture, 7 Dimensions of Creation, Dr. George King talks about that, refers to that. And he briefly, when he's talking about higher beings like the Saturnians, but 7 dimensions for us, like Nehemiah just mentioned, we'll first focus on the 7. Any other questions or comments? Let's see on the next page. All right, let's look at mapping out the 10 senses and 10 sense organs. I think next week I'd like to come back to this Pratyahara page here, because as I'm reading through it, these three paragraphs, particularly these two paragraphs, more questions are coming to mind. And so I'm going to write down some of those questions and we'll come back to this next week. For the time we have remaining, let's look at the mapping out the 10 senses, the 10 sense organs, and then we'll close out today's open discussion. So illustrated on the left-hand side, you have the 10 senses and their corresponding physical organs. So it's number one, sight or visual perception of items. It allows you to experience the item's presence and their visual description. Number two, hearing or perception of sound. It allows you to experience the conscious thoughts / mental expressions of another person or object. And why is that? Remember, Nehemiah describes sound as consciousness, right? Number three, smell or perception of odor. It allows you to connect with an object or person through the odor or scent that's expelled from the being. For taste, it is the perception or defining flavor and the ability of experiencing something through blending one's self with it through the tongue, a sense organ. Also with number three, smell. Nehemiah's mentioned before, it's also an indication of time. If you have questions about that, we can go more into that later. Five, touch is the sensory perception for experiencing the physical state of another object through the skin or sense organ. Right, so that's the first five. Now move into the next set of five. The sixth, speech is a known additional sense. It's the ability to translate consciousness and thoughts into the spoken words through the tongue, the sense organ of the body. Number seven, generation is a known additional sense which builds the attraction to the opposite sex and is the sense organ that operates from the genitals and is the instrument for procreation. Number eight, excretion is a known additional sense. It is the ability to translate consciousness and thoughts. Oh, actually, that's repeated. Number nine, grasping. This additional sense is the ability to pick up objects that consciousness perceives. The hands are the sense organs for grasping. And number 10, this additional sense is the ability to move through the physical realm with the use of the sense organs, the feet. There's an error there in number 8 for excretion. Vicky, you can access these handouts in our Google Drive shared folder. I believe you found the link to today's meetup through MeetUp. The link through today's class, MeetUp. And in that meetup announcement, there is a link to our Google Drive shared folder. If not, I can post a link to that shared folder in the chat. Give me a second. Was there anything you wanted to add, Imani?
No.
Okay. So any additional comments or questions? Again, for next time, I want to go back and look at
In the new book that I wrote, there's a section. You want to go over that? You could. I go into this in that new book.
in the withdrawing the census. Okay.
Yeah. I think it was in chapter 2 or chapter 3.
So there in the chat is a link to the shared folder. And again, do let me know if you cannot locate these particular handouts there. I do remember uploading them, but in case there's a mistake or that folder isn't properly shared and you don't have access to it, let me know and I will get that corrected. Any final questions or comments before we close out today's open discussion? If not, let us close out reciting of the New Lord's Prayer. The New Lord's Prayer. O divine and wondrous Spirit, O everlasting Lord of hosts, send forth now through me thy great and lasting power. Allow me, Almighty God, the lasting privilege of radiating to all the world thy great love, so that those who suffer may be given the power and energy to rise above their weaknesses. Almighty God, in great humility do I ask you to send forth your power to give to me this great lasting privilege of being a channel, so that my suffering brothers may be helped and guided and healed and lifted into thy light, so that they who know not may look up and in doing so receive through their higher selves your divine counsel. Almighty God, this day have you granted me a divine privilege. I ask you now to give to me the strength so that never again will I turn from my inner vision of you. Oh, great peace, great peace, great peace. In praise of your greatness, O God, doth my soul sing. Granted energy to sing on forever and forever. Thank you very much, everyone, for your attendance and participation. Today's handouts are not in 2022. Okay, thank you, Vicky. I will have those uploaded today before the end of the day.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Have a good one.